Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is 20,000 people lived underground in secret. You get comfortable. Take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. 20,000 people lived underground in secret. Imagine that you are standing on a wide, sunlit plain in the heart of central Anatolia. The air is dry, the wind is gentle, and the landscape seems almost empty. Low hills stretch into the distance beneath a calm blue sky. Nothing about this quiet place suggests that beneath your feet lies one of the greatest hidden worlds ever created by human hands. If you were to walk across this land a few hundred years ago, you would probably notice nothing unusual. Farmers would be tending their fields. Children would be running along dusty paths. Shepherds would guide their flocks across the countryside, just as their ancestors had done for countless generations. Life above the ground would appear ordinary, but below, far below, there would be another world. A silent world of tunnels, rooms, stairways, hidden churches, kitchens, wells, storage chambers, schools, sleeping quarters, and secret passages. A place where nearly 20,000 people could disappear without leaving a trace. Tonight, as we slowly travel back through history, we are going to explore one of humanity's most astonishing achievements. A city beneath the earth. Not a cave, not a small shelter, but an entire underground civilization. Take a slow breath. Allow your thoughts to settle. As the world around you grows quieter, imagine descending the first worn stone steps leading into darkness. Each step carries you farther away from sunlight, farther away from noise, farther away from the familiar world above. The temperature changes almost immediately. The warm afternoon air fades behind you. A cool, steady breeze brushes against your face. The stone walls around you feel smooth in some places and rough in others, worn by thousands of hands over hundreds of years. There is no sound except your own footsteps. Perhaps somewhere far ahead, a faint drop of water echoes softly through the passage. You continue walking. The tunnel bends gently. Then it bends again. Soon the daylight behind you becomes only a distant memory. Yet strangely, the darkness does not feel frightening. Instead, it feels peaceful, quiet, protective, almost comforting. Long before electricity, these passages would have been illuminated by tiny oil lamps. Their gentle flames would have danced against the volcanic stone walls, filling the tunnels with warm golden light. Families carrying baskets of food would move carefully through these corridors. Children would whisper to one another as they followed their parents. Elders would slowly make their way from one chamber to another, knowing every turn by heart. For them, this underground city was not an adventure. It was simply home. Many people today are surprised to learn that such places truly existed. At first glance, the idea almost sounds impossible. How could 20,000 people survive underground? Where did they sleep? Where did they find water? How did they breathe? How did they cook? How did they raise children? How could animals live beneath the earth? And perhaps the greatest question of all, why? Why would thousands of people willingly leave the sunlight behind? The answer is more fascinating than most people imagine. This story begins millions of years before the first human ever picked up a stone tool. Long before cities, long before kingdoms, long before history itself. Central Anatolia was once a land shaped by enormous volcanoes. Again and again, ancient eruptions covered the landscape with thick layers of volcanic ash. Over countless centuries, that ash slowly hardened into a soft stone known today as tuff. Unlike solid granite, volcanic tuff is remarkably easy to carve using surprisingly simple tools. Nature had quietly prepared the perfect building material. No one could have known that one day entire cities would be carved into it. Rain, wind, snow, summer heat, winter frost, year after year, century after century. These natural forces shaped valleys, cliffs, and towering rock formations across the region. Today, many people know this magical landscape as Cappadocia. Its unusual stone pillars seem almost too fantastic to be real. Some rise like giant mushrooms. Others resemble tall chimneys reaching toward the sky. Morning sunlight paints them golden. Evening shadows transform them into mysterious silhouettes. The landscape itself feels almost dreamlike. Yet beneath these beautiful valleys lies an even greater wonder. Generations of people slowly discovered something remarkable. The volcanic rock could be carved with patience. A small shelter became a larger room. A room became a tunnel. A tunnel connected to another chamber. Over many centuries, these spaces continued growing. No single person designed the underground city all at once. Instead, countless generations added their own small pieces. One family carved a storage room. Another expanded a sleeping chamber. Years later, someone dug a deeper well. Another generation widened a narrow passage. Little by little, the hidden world expanded beneath the surface. It was never rushed. It evolved naturally, almost like the growth of a great tree whose roots spread silently beneath the ground. Imagine living in such a place. Above the surface, seasons changed. Spring flowers covered the valleys. Summer brought warmth. Autumn painted the hills with soft colors. Winter covered everything with snow. But deep underground, the temperature hardly changed at all. It remained cool during the hottest summers. It remained surprisingly warm during freezing winters. The earth itself became a giant natural shelter. Food lasted longer. Water stayed cool. People were protected from harsh weather. This alone made underground life practical long before it became necessary for survival. Then history changed everything. Empires rose. Empires fell. Armies crossed these lands again and again. Every generation faced new dangers. Invaders appeared without warning. Bandits searched for villages. Religious persecution forced communities to hide. In uncertain times, disappearing beneath the earth could mean the difference between life and death. The underground city became something far greater than shelter. It became hope. Imagine hearing distant hoofbeats across the valley, dust rising on the horizon, messengers arriving with urgent news. An army was approaching. There would be no panic, no chaos. Everyone already knew exactly what to do. Families gathered their belongings. Food was collected. Animals were guided toward hidden entrances. Children held their parents' hands. Large, circular stone doors were slowly rolled into position after everyone entered. From the outside, many entrances became almost impossible to notice. The village above might appear abandoned, silent, empty. Meanwhile, thousands of people waited patiently beneath the earth, safe, hidden, almost invisible. The remarkable engineering behind these cities still amazes experts today. Fresh air reached even the deepest levels through carefully designed ventilation shafts. Some shafts extended more than 50 meters toward the surface. They quietly supplied oxygen throughout the underground world. Without them, survival would have been impossible. Water came through protected wells. Many of these wells were designed so that enemies above could not poison the city's main water supply. Food storage rooms held grain, dried fruit, nuts, seeds, and preserved vegetables. Wine and oil were stored inside large clay jars. Animals occupied separate chambers. Smoke from cooking fires was carefully managed. Every detail reflected generations of practical experience. Nothing existed by accident. Everything served a purpose. As you continue walking through these silent corridors, imagine gently placing your hand against the cool, volcanic stone. Think of the thousands of people who touched this very wall before you. A mother carrying fresh bread, a child running to meet friends, an elderly craftsman returning home after repairing tools, a young couple beginning a new life together. Their names have mostly been forgotten. Their voices have faded into history. Yet the city they created still whispers their story to anyone willing to listen. And as we continue our slow journey deeper beneath the earth, we are only beginning to understand how an entire hidden civilization quietly flourished below the surface, while the world above remained completely unaware. You continue walking. The quiet passage stretches gently ahead, curving just enough that you can never quite see what lies beyond the next corner. The air remains cool and still, carrying only the faint scent of damp volcanic stone. Every step feels softer than the last, as though the earth itself is quietly absorbing every sound. Imagine holding a small oil lamp in your hand. Its flame flickers gently, casting warm circles of light across walls that have watched countless generations come and go. Some marks on the stone are smooth from centuries of passing hands. Others still carry the tiny grooves left behind by the tools that patiently carved this hidden city, one careful strike at a time. Picture yourself living here, not for an afternoon, not for a single night, but for weeks, perhaps even months. At first, the thought may seem difficult to imagine. Modern life is filled with windows, bright lights, and endless distractions. Yet the people who once called this place home knew a very different rhythm. Their days were slower. Their routines followed necessity rather than convenience. Above ground, the rising sun announced the beginning of each morning. Below ground, life depended instead on quiet habits, passed carefully from one generation to the next. Someone would wake before everyone else. A tiny flame would be lit. Another person would quietly begin preparing bread. Somewhere nearby, a child would slowly awaken, rubbing sleepy eyes before following the comforting smell of warm food. The underground city would gradually come to life, not with loud voices, not with hurried footsteps, but with gentle movement. Thousands of ordinary moments woven together. The remarkable thing is that this hidden world was never designed simply as a collection of tunnels. It functioned much like a town above the surface. Every space had its own purpose. Some rooms were surprisingly large, others were barely wide enough for one person to pass through. Wide halls connected smaller chambers. Low ceilings helped keep temperatures stable. Stone benches lined certain rooms. Storage niches were carved directly into the walls. Nothing was wasted. Every corner reflected careful planning developed over many centuries. Imagine following a family as they begin another ordinary day. The father checks the grain supplies. His daughter helps carry water from one of the protected wells. His son gathers dried firewood stored safely inside a cool chamber. Their grandmother quietly kneads dough while softly humming a tune that has likely been passed down for generations. Nearby, neighbors greet one another with familiar smiles. Life continues. Even beneath the earth, people laugh. They tell stories. They celebrate birthdays. Children invent games. Friendships grow stronger. Love finds its way into even the darkest places. History often remembers kings, emperors, and great battles. Yet most of history belonged to ordinary people: farmers, builders, potters, mothers, children, teachers, craftsmen. It is their lives that truly filled these underground cities. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding these remarkable places is exactly how long they remained in use. Archaeologists believe that some of the earliest underground chambers may date back nearly 4,000 years. Generation after generation continued expanding them. Different cultures inherited the tunnels. Each added something new. The city slowly evolved. No single blueprint existed. Instead, it grew naturally, responding to the changing needs of the people who depended upon it. Imagine planting a tree. Year after year, its roots spread quietly beneath the soil. They twist around rocks. They seek water. They grow wherever space allows. Eventually, those roots become an enormous hidden network, supporting everything above. The underground city developed in much the same way. Its tunnels spread patiently beneath the landscape. Sometimes downward, sometimes sideways, always adapting, always expanding. One remarkable feature still fascinates engineers today: ventilation. Without fresh air, thousands of people could never have survived underground. Yet somehow, the builders solved this enormous challenge using nothing more than careful observation and practical experience. Deep vertical shafts reached toward the surface. Warm air naturally rose upward. Fresh air slowly drifted downward. The system quietly renewed itself day after day. No electricity, no machines, only an understanding of nature. Even today, many visitors are surprised by how fresh the air feels deep inside these ancient passages. The builders may never have studied physics in the modern sense, but they understood their environment remarkably well. Water was another precious resource. Imagine lowering a clay bucket into a narrow stone well. The rope slides softly through your hands. Far below, the bucket touches cool water with a gentle splash. Moments later, clean drinking water begins its slow journey back toward the surface. These wells represented life itself. Some connected directly to underground water sources. Others were carefully protected from anyone outside the city. If invaders reached the village above, they could not easily contaminate the hidden community's water supply. Such careful planning speaks of generations who understood danger all too well. As the centuries passed, this underground world became increasingly sophisticated. There were places for making wine, places for pressing olive oil, places where grain could be stored for long periods. Large communal kitchens allowed families to prepare food together. Smoke was carefully directed through hidden ventilation passages. Even after cooking fires burned for hours, dangerous smoke rarely accumulated inside the living areas. The builders learned through experience. Each generation improved upon the work of the last. Perhaps one of the most comforting aspects of underground life was the constant temperature. Above ground, winters in central Anatolia could be bitterly cold. Snow often covered the valleys. Sharp winds swept across the open plains. Summers, by contrast, brought intense heat beneath the bright sun. But deep beneath the earth, conditions changed very little. Throughout the year, temperatures remained pleasantly cool. Imagine stepping indoors during the hottest summer afternoon. Instead of oppressive heat, you are greeted by refreshing coolness. The earth itself becomes a natural shelter. Food spoils more slowly. People sleep more comfortably. Even during harsh winters, the underground chambers remain surprisingly warm compared with the freezing air outside. Nature quietly provides protection. This remarkable stability helped entire communities survive difficult seasons. Children growing up here likely accepted these surroundings as perfectly ordinary. They would race through familiar tunnels without hesitation. Every turn would feel as familiar as streets in a modern neighborhood. Perhaps they invented secret games among the passages. Perhaps they counted steps between favorite rooms. Perhaps they imagined adventures inside tunnels that adults rarely visited. Childhood has always found ways to create joy, regardless of circumstance. As evening approached, families would gather together. Simple meals would be shared. Stories would be told. Older relatives might speak about events that happened many years earlier. Children would listen with wide eyes as tales of distant kingdoms, difficult winters, brave ancestors, and miraculous escapes filled the quiet chambers. These stories carried knowledge. They preserved identity. Long before books became common, memory itself served as history. Imagine listening beside a gently flickering oil lamp. Outside, somewhere far above, stars begin appearing across the night sky. You cannot see them from here, yet you know they are there. Perhaps that thought alone brings comfort. Life beneath the earth never completely separated people from the world above. When danger passed, families emerged once again into sunlight. Fields needed tending. Animals grazed in open pastures. Fruit trees required care. Markets reopened. Children played beneath blue skies. The underground city was never meant to replace life above. Instead, it quietly waited, always ready, always prepared, a refuge patiently carved into the heart of the earth. And yet, as archaeologists would discover many centuries later, the deepest levels still held secrets that no one expected. Hidden passages continued farther than anyone imagined. Entire chambers remained sealed. Behind enormous circular stone doors lay silent rooms untouched for hundreds of years. What had happened there? Who built the deepest tunnels? And just how many people had once gathered beneath this quiet landscape? Those questions would slowly lead explorers deeper into one of history's greatest underground mysteries. As our gentle journey continues, we too will follow those winding passages, discovering rooms that remained hidden from the modern world for generations. The deeper you travel into the underground city, the more you begin to understand something important. This was never just a place where people hid. It was a place where people lived. A place where human creativity, patience, and determination transformed ordinary volcanic rock into a world of survival. The tunnels beneath the earth were not created in a single moment of fear. They were shaped slowly, quietly, over many generations. Every carved wall carried evidence of countless hours of work. Every passage represented a decision made by people who understood that preparation could protect their families. Imagine standing in one of the wider chambers. The ceiling rises above you, supported only by the strength of the stone itself. The room feels surprisingly spacious. Perhaps this was once a place where families gathered. Perhaps people sat here during long evenings, sharing meals and stories while the wind moved silently across the land above. The world outside continued changing. Kings ruled, armies marched, borders shifted. But beneath the ground, these communities created their own small universe. A hidden world that followed a different rhythm. One of the most fascinating discoveries about these underground cities is the complexity of their design. Modern visitors often imagine simple caves, but that idea could not be further from reality. These were carefully organized spaces. There were areas for living, areas for working, areas for storing supplies, areas for worship, areas for protection. Some sections were connected by narrow tunnels that forced visitors to move slowly. Others opened into larger rooms where groups of people could gather. The builders understood that every meter of space mattered. Nothing was created without purpose. One of the most impressive features was the massive stone doors used for protection. Imagine seeing one for the first time. A huge circular stone disc rests beside a passageway. It looks almost impossible to move. Yet with careful engineering, people could roll it across the entrance from inside. Once closed, it created a powerful barrier. The stone doors were designed so that those outside could not easily enter. A small opening allowed communication and observation. But the entrance itself remained protected. These doors tell us something important about the lives of the people who used these cities. They lived with uncertainty. They knew that danger could arrive suddenly. An ordinary morning could become a moment of crisis. A peaceful village could become a target. The underground city was their answer to a dangerous world. But survival was not only about hiding, it was also about preparation. A community could not simply run underground and hope everything would work out. They needed food. They needed water. They needed organization. They needed trust. Thousands of people living together in a hidden environment required cooperation. Everyone had a role. Farmers provided food. Craftsmen repaired tools. Families cared for children and older relatives. Leaders made decisions during difficult times. The underground city depended on people working together. In many ways, it reflected one of humanity's oldest strengths: community, the ability to survive because people help one another. Think about a small child growing up in this environment. Their first memories would not involve tall buildings or crowded streets. Their world would be made of stone corridors, warm lamps, familiar voices, and the comforting footsteps of family members. The underground city would not feel mysterious. It would feel normal. Children adapt to the world they know. A child born beneath the earth might look at the tunnels the same way another child looks at a garden or a village road. They would know every corner. They would understand which passages led to storage rooms. They would know where their friends lived. They would learn the sounds of daily life, the soft grinding of grain, the movement of people carrying supplies, the quiet conversations of neighbors, the gentle crackling of cooking fires. Life continued. Even in darkness, humanity created warmth. But one question remains. Why would people choose to build such enormous underground settlements in the first place? The answer is connected to the geography of the region and the long history of conflict. Central Anatolia has always been a crossroads. For thousands of years, different peoples traveled through this land. Trade routes crossed the valleys. Armies moved across the plains. Civilizations rose and disappeared. This location brought opportunity. But it also brought danger. A village in an exposed valley could be vulnerable. A hidden settlement beneath the ground offered another possibility. A place where communities could survive when the surface became unsafe. The underground cities became a form of invisible architecture. Above ground, enemies might see only empty fields and ordinary homes. They would never know that an entire population waited below. This idea of hidden survival appears throughout human history. People have always searched for ways to protect themselves from threats. Some built castles on mountains. Some created fortified walls around cities. Some escaped in forests. Others went beneath the earth. The people of Cappadocia chose the stone beneath their feet. And that choice changed history. As you walk deeper, you begin noticing small details. A carved shelf in the wall. A storage space perfectly shaped for a clay jar. A narrow opening that connects one room to another. These details reveal the daily lives of people who lived here. History is often hidden in small things, not only in grand monuments or royal palaces. Sometimes history survives in the ordinary objects people used every day. A simple doorway can tell a story. A worn staircase can reveal generations of movement. A forgotten room can remind us that someone once lived, worked, and dreamed there. Perhaps the most emotional part of exploring these underground cities is realizing that the people who built them were not trying to create a wonder for future generations. They were simply trying to live. They wanted safety. They wanted homes. They wanted their children to grow up. They wanted tomorrow to arrive. The underground city was an expression of hope, not fear. Because every tunnel carved into the stone represented a belief that life was worth protecting. Every chamber represented a future someone imagined. Every passage represented a family that hoped to return to the sunlight again. As centuries passed, these hidden worlds witnessed countless moments. Births, deaths, celebrations, hardships, quiet mornings, long winters, unexpected dangers. The stone remembered everything. And slowly, beneath the peaceful landscape of Cappadocia, a remarkable human story continued unfolding. But the mystery was far from complete, because beneath these already enormous underground cities were deeper levels that seemed almost impossible. Hidden chambers that challenged everything historians thought they knew. How far did these tunnels really go? How many people could truly survive there? And what secrets remained untouched beneath the earth? The journey is only beginning. As we continue deeper into this forgotten world, we will discover how thousands of people managed to create a complete underground society hidden from the outside world. The deeper you move into the underground city, the more the outside world begins to feel distant. The sounds of the surface disappear completely. No birds singing above the valleys, no wind moving through the grass, no footsteps of travelers crossing the land. Only silence remains. A silence that has existed for centuries. Yet within that silence, there is a story. A story carved into stone. A story created by thousands of ordinary people who transformed darkness into a place of life. Imagine slowly walking through one of the narrow passages. Your hand gently touches the wall beside you. The surface is cool and uneven. Here and there, you notice small marks left behind by ancient tools. Each mark represents a moment of effort. A person standing in this exact place, holding a simple tool, removing one small piece of stone, then another, and another. A single person could not create such a world. It required generations. Perhaps a grandfather began carving a room that his grandchildren would later expand. Perhaps a family created a small storage area that eventually became. The underground city was not just built, it was inherited. Each generation received the work of those before them and added something new. Over time, the hidden settlement became a living record of human persistence. One of the most surprising aspects of these underground cities was their ability to support large populations. When people hear that thousands of individuals lived beneath the ground, they often imagine crowded, uncomfortable spaces. But the reality was far more organized. These communities understood how to use every available area efficiently. A room was never just a room. A chamber could serve different purposes depending on the situation. A storage area during peaceful times could become a gathering place during emergencies. A quiet corner could become a sleeping area. A passage could serve as both transportation and protection. The people who lived here understood something that modern societies sometimes forget. Space is not only measured by size, it is measured by usefulness. Deep underground, every section had meaning. There were places where food was prepared, places where animals were sheltered, places where tools were repaired, places where people gathered for important moments. Some chambers were believed to have been used for religious activities. Small underground churches were carved into the stone, showing that spiritual life continued even far below the surface. The people did not abandon their beliefs when they entered the earth. They carried their traditions with them. Their prayers, their songs, their celebrations, their hopes. The underground city was not a place without light. It was a place where people created their own light. A small flame from an oil lamp could transform a dark chamber into a warm gathering place. A familiar voice could make a cold tunnel feel like home. A shared meal could bring comfort during uncertain times. Human beings have always carried warmth with them, even into the deepest places. As you continue exploring, you come across something that reveals another important part of underground life. Storage rooms, large areas carved specifically for preserving supplies. For a community of thousands, food planning was essential. Imagine preparing for a long winter. Above the surface, fields would eventually become covered with snow. Plants would stop growing. Travel would become difficult. The underground city needed enough supplies to survive. Grain would be carefully stored. Dried fruits would be preserved. Nuts and seeds would be protected. Large clay containers would hold liquids such as oil or wine. Nothing was wasted. Every harvest represented security. Every stored piece of food represented preparation. The people understood that survival depended not only on what they had today, but on what they saved for tomorrow. This way of thinking shaped their entire society. The underground city was built around patience, a quality that modern life often moves away from. Today, people expect immediate results, instant communication, fast transportation, quick solutions. But the builders of these cities worked differently. They knew that some things required time. A tunnel might take years to complete. A chamber might be expanded by several generations. A safe community might take centuries to develop. They worked knowing they might never see the final result. They built for their children and their children's children. Perhaps that is one of the most beautiful lessons hidden beneath the earth. Some of humanity's greatest achievements were created by people who knew they would never personally witness the finished work. They trusted the future. They believed their efforts mattered. Now imagine the moments when the underground city was fully occupied. Thousands of people living together, a small society hidden beneath the landscape. Somewhere above, the sun rises and sets. Seasons change. History moves forward. But below, another world continues. A messenger arrives with news. A family prepares supplies. Children learn from elders. Craftsmen repair tools. Farmers discuss the next harvest. Life follows its familiar pattern. Then, when danger appears, the entire community changes. The peaceful underground town becomes a carefully organized refuge. People move quickly but calmly. Everyone knows where to go. Everyone understands their responsibility. The large stone doors are closed. The outside world disappears. For those above, the settlement seems empty. But beneath their feet, thousands of people wait. This ability to disappear was one of the underground city's greatest strengths. It was not a fortress designed to fight enemies. It was a place designed to survive them. The people were not trying to conquer anyone. They were trying to protect what mattered most: their families, their homes, their way of life. As centuries passed, different groups used these underground spaces for different reasons. Some sought protection from conflict. Others used them as temporary shelters during dangerous periods. Some communities continued maintaining them even during peaceful times because they understood the value of preparation. The underground city became a silent guardian, always present, always waiting. And perhaps the most mysterious part is that the world above often had no idea how much existed below. A simple hillside could hide a massive network. An ordinary field could cover ancient rooms. A quiet village could stand above a forgotten civilization. The surface told only half the story. The other half waited underground, hidden, patient, silent. As we continue our journey deeper, we will discover the incredible engineering that allowed thousands of people to breathe, live, and survive below the earth for extended periods. We will explore the hidden systems that made this impossible-looking world function. The ventilation shafts, the secret entrances, the protective designs, and the remarkable intelligence behind a city that remained invisible for centuries. As you continue deeper into the underground city, something remarkable begins to become clear. The greatest achievement of this hidden world was not simply that people could hide beneath the earth. The greatest achievement was that they could live there. They created a complete environment where thousands of people could survive for long periods of time without returning to the surface. This was not a temporary hiding place. It was a carefully planned underground society, a place where human intelligence worked together with nature. Imagine standing inside one of the deepest chambers. The air feels cool and steady. The walls surround you with a quiet strength. Above you, layers of earth and stone separate you from the outside world. Yet somehow, life continues. People breathe. People eat. People work. People sleep. The underground city feels almost impossible, but it existed, and its survival depended on one of the most important inventions hidden within the stone: air. Fresh air. Without a constant supply of oxygen, no underground civilization could survive. The builders understood this challenge. They knew that a crowded underground settlement could become dangerous very quickly. Smoke from lamps and cooking fires could fill enclosed spaces. Stale air could make people weak. A lack of ventilation could turn the city into a trap. So they created a system that quietly moved air through the entire underground network. Vertical shafts were carved deep into the earth. Some reached from the lowest levels toward the surface. These openings acted like the lungs of the city. They allowed fresh air to enter. They allowed warm, used air to escape. The system worked naturally. No machines, no electricity, no modern technology. Only an understanding of how air moves. Think about the knowledge required to create something like this. The builders had to understand the importance of airflow. They had to consider the size of passages. They had to decide where shafts should be placed. They had to ensure that different levels of the city remained connected. A mistake could have affected thousands of lives. Yet generation after generation improved the design. The result was an underground environment where people could breathe comfortably, even far below the surface. This achievement becomes even more impressive when we remember the tools available at the time. There were no modern drills, no powerful engines, no advanced construction equipment, only human hands, simple tools, patience, and determination. Every tunnel represented countless hours of labor. Every chamber represented careful planning. Every opening represented knowledge passed from one generation to another. The underground city was built slowly, almost like a conversation between humans and the earth. The people did not force the landscape to become something completely different. Instead, they worked with what nature provided. The soft volcanic rock became their building material. The natural temperature became their climate system. The underground darkness became their protection. The earth itself became their shelter. As you walk through the passages, you might notice that some areas feel more comfortable than others. Some rooms are wider, some tunnels are narrower. Some spaces seem designed for movement. Others seem created for long periods of rest. This was not random. The builders carefully considered how people would use each area. They understood that underground living required balance. A city beneath the surface needed organization. Without organization, thousands of people living together could not survive. Imagine a normal morning inside the underground city. A family wakes as a small lamp begins to glow. Someone prepares bread. Another person checks stored supplies. Children quietly move through familiar passages on their way to learn from elders. Craftsmen begin repairing tools. Farmers discuss the work waiting above ground when it becomes safe. The city slowly awakens, not through the sound of traffic or crowds, but through simple human activity, a conversation, a footstep, the sound of preparation, the warmth of community. The underground city was not silent when people lived there. It had its own sounds, the gentle movement of daily life. Another fascinating feature was the use of hidden entrances. The people who built these settlements understood that protection depended on secrecy. An underground city was only useful if enemies could not easily find or enter it. Many entrances were carefully disguised. From the surface, they could appear like ordinary openings in the landscape. Others were located in places that were difficult for outsiders to discover. The goal was not to show strength. The goal was to remain unnoticed. A visible fortress announces itself. An underground city disappears. That was its power. Imagine an enemy approaching the valley. They see fields. They see homes. They see quiet land. They believe there is nothing unusual. They do not know that beneath their feet, thousands of people are waiting safely underground. This ability to vanish gave communities a rare advantage. They could survive without fighting. They could protect themselves without building enormous armies. They could preserve their culture during dangerous periods. The underground city represented another form of strength, not the strength of weapons, the strength of planning. One of the most remarkable things about these places is how they reveal the priorities of ordinary people. When humans build something enormous, we often think about power, palaces, monuments, great walls. But these underground cities tell a different story. They were not built to impress rulers. They were not built to display wealth. They were built because people wanted to protect life, a safe place for families, a place where children could grow, a place where traditions could continue, a place where hope could survive even during uncertain times. Deep beneath the earth, thousands of people created something that was invisible, but incredibly meaningful. Their achievement was not about being seen. It was about enduring. And perhaps that is why these underground cities still capture our imagination today. They remind us that human creativity appears not only in grand structures above the ground. Sometimes the greatest achievements are hidden. Sometimes history's most extraordinary stories are waiting beneath our feet. As you move farther into the underground world, more mysteries begin to appear. There are signs of everyday life. Places where families gathered, areas where animals were kept, rooms where important decisions may have been made. And deeper still, passages that lead toward sections researchers are still studying. Because the underground city was larger than anyone expected, it was a world within a world, a hidden civilization that survived through intelligence, cooperation, and patience. But one question remains. How did thousands of people organize themselves during moments of danger? How did they communicate when the entire population had to move underground? How did they maintain order inside a city where escape to the surface was impossible? The answers reveal an even more fascinating side of this hidden civilization, a society built not only with stone, but with trust. As you continue your quiet journey through the underground city, you begin to notice something that makes this place even more extraordinary. The stone walls tell one story, but the way people lived together tells another. Because creating an underground city was not only an engineering challenge, it was a human challenge. Thousands of people cannot live together anywhere without cooperation. Above ground or below ground, a community survives because people trust one another. And deep beneath the earth, trust became one of the most valuable resources of all. Imagine a moment when danger approached. The surface world suddenly became uncertain. A message traveled from one family to another. People already understood what needed to happen. There was no need for confusion. No need for arguments. Everyone knew the routine. Supplies were gathered, animals were moved, important belongings were carried below. Children stayed close to their families. Elders were guided carefully through the passages. The underground city slowly filled with life. Thousands of people entered the hidden world beneath the ground. Then the enormous stone doors were moved into place. The outside world disappeared. For a while, the city above became almost empty. But below the surface, another community continued breathing. This ability to organize such a large population remains one of the greatest mysteries surrounding these settlements. How could so many people live together underground without chaos? The answer was preparation. Generations of experience taught them how to survive. They understood where supplies were stored. They understood which rooms had specific purposes. They understood how to share limited resources. Every person depended on everyone else. A single family could not survive alone. The underground city was built on cooperation. Imagine the daily responsibilities of the people living there. Some individuals were responsible for food. Others cared for animals. Some maintained tools. Some repaired damaged areas of the tunnels. Some looked after children. Some preserved traditions and stories. Every role mattered. Even small tasks contributed to the survival of thousands. This teaches us something important about ancient communities. They were not simple or disorganized. They were often highly skilled at solving difficult problems. They understood their environment deeply. They learned from experience. They passed knowledge from one generation to the next. The underground city was a result of accumulated wisdom. A grandmother might teach a child where supplies were stored. A craftsman might teach an apprentice how to repair tools. A builder might explain how to strengthen a passage. Knowledge was not written only in books. It was written in people. It was carried through voices. through memories, through daily actions. Now imagine the atmosphere during peaceful times. The city was not always filled with fear. This is something easy to forget. When we hear about underground shelters, we often imagine only danger. But these places were also homes. People experienced ordinary moments. A mother preparing food, a father telling stories, children laughing together, neighbors sharing conversations, a family celebrating an important occasion. Life continued even underground. The human spirit has always searched for normality. Even in difficult circumstances, people create routines. They create comfort. They create moments of happiness. The underground city was not simply a place where people waited for danger to end. It was a place where life continued. One of the most interesting parts of these settlements was their ability to separate different activities. Living spaces were not mixed randomly. Certain areas were designed for specific purposes. There were places for storage, places for animals, places for worship, places for gathering, places for rest. This organization helped the community function smoothly. Think about a modern city. A city has homes, schools, markets, hospitals, and workplaces. Although the underground city was very different, it followed a similar idea. Different spaces had different functions. The difference was that everything existed inside the earth. The people had created an entire urban environment without streets or open skies, a city hidden from the world above. Another fascinating question is how people communicate throughout such a large underground network. The tunnels could extend in many directions. Some areas were separated by distance. Some levels were connected through narrow passages. Yet the community still needed information to travel quickly. Messages likely moved through trusted individuals who knew the routes well. People who understood every turn, every staircase, every hidden connection. These underground guides were essential. Their knowledge was a form of survival. A person who knew the city completely could move through it even in darkness. The underground world became a map stored inside human memory. There was something deeply emotional about imagining these forgotten individuals, the people who knew every corner of this hidden civilization. The people who walked these tunnels thousands of times. Their names are mostly lost today, but their skills made survival possible. They were the invisible guardians of the underground world. As you walk farther, you begin to understand another remarkable fact. The underground city was not only protecting bodies, it was protecting culture. When communities face danger, one of the greatest risks is losing their identity. Languages disappear. Traditions fade. Stories are forgotten. But underground, people continued passing their heritage to younger generations. They taught children who they were, where they came from, what their ancestors had experienced. The tunnels protected more than physical life. They protected memory. They protected belonging. They protected the idea that a community could continue even during uncertain times. Perhaps this is why these underground cities feel so powerful today. They are not just architectural wonders. They are reminders of human resilience. They show what people can accomplish when survival depends on creativity and cooperation. They show that ordinary people can create extraordinary solutions. As centuries passed, the world above changed many times. New rulers appeared, New technologies developed. New societies formed. But beneath the landscape, these ancient passages remained. Silent witnesses, patient observers, holding stories that waited to be rediscovered. And eventually, the modern world would begin to uncover these hidden places. Explorers would enter the tunnels. Archaeologists would study the chambers. Researchers would try to understand how thousands of people once lived beneath the ground. But even after discovery, many mysteries remained. Because the underground city still had secrets, hidden rooms, unknown passages, ancient markings, questions that could not be answered easily. And perhaps the greatest mystery of all: why did humans go to such incredible lengths to create a world beneath the earth? The answer takes us deeper into the history of conflict, survival, and the incredible determination of people who refuse to disappear. The deeper we travel into this hidden world, the more we begin to understand that the underground city was not created by one single moment in history. It was the result of thousands of small decisions, small choices made by people who understood that the future could be uncertain. A person carving a new room, a family expanding a storage area, a builder improving a passage, a community protecting a source of water. Each action became part of something much larger, something that would survive long after the original creators were gone. Imagine standing quietly inside one of the oldest chambers. The air is still. The stone around you feels ancient. You look at the walls and realize that every surface represents human effort. Someone once stood here with a simple tool in their hand. Someone spent hours, days, and perhaps years shaping this place. Not for fame, not for recognition, but for survival. The people who built these underground cities probably never imagined that thousands of years later, strangers would walk through these same passages and wonder about their lives. They were not trying to create a historical wonder. They were trying to create a safe tomorrow. And perhaps that is what makes their achievement so meaningful. It was created from necessity, from hope, from the simple human desire to protect family and community. As we continue deeper, we begin to explore one of the most important reasons these underground settlements became so valuable: protection from a changing world. The land of Cappadocia has always been a crossroads. Different cultures passed through this region. Traders traveled across its valleys. Armies moved through its landscapes. New rulers replaced old ones. For the people living here, history was never distant. It was happening around them. One generation might experience peace. The next might face uncertainty. A peaceful farming community could suddenly find itself in danger. In such a world, preparation became essential. The underground city offered something rare: time. When danger appeared, people did not need to build a shelter from the beginning. The shelter was already waiting. It had food. It had water. It had protection. It had rooms ready for families. It had systems designed through generations of experience. The city beneath the earth was like a silent promise, a promise that even during difficult times, life could continue. Imagine the moment when a family entered the underground city during a crisis. A young child looks around with curiosity. The child has seen these tunnels before. Perhaps they have played here. Perhaps they know the passages better than some adults. But today feels different. Today, the adults move with greater seriousness. Supplies are carried carefully. Voices become quieter. The large stone door begins to move. Slowly, steadily. The opening becomes smaller. The last ray of sunlight disappears. For a moment, there is complete darkness. Then a small lamp is lit. Warm light fills the chamber. The family looks around. They are not outside. They are not free to walk through the fields. But they are safe. And safety was everything. This moment repeated many times throughout history. The underground city became a place where fear could be controlled. Not eliminated, but controlled. Because humans have always searched for ways to create security in uncertain times. Some built walls. Some built towers. Some built ships to escape. The people of Cappadocia built downward. They used the earth itself as their protection. One of the most fascinating parts of these underground communities was their relationship with animals. Animals were an important part of daily life. They provided food, materials, and assistance. A farming community could not simply abandon its animals during dangerous periods. So underground areas were designed for them as well. Imagine moving through a passage and discovering a chamber larger than expected. The walls carry signs of another purpose. This was not a living room. It was a place where animals could be kept safely. The people understood that survival depended on protecting every valuable resource. Food, water, tools, animals, knowledge, everything mattered. Another remarkable feature was the ability of the underground city to remain hidden. Secrecy itself was a form of protection. The builders understood that the best defense was sometimes not being found at all. Unlike a castle, the underground city did not announce its existence. There were no giant walls visible from a distance, no tall towers, no signs showing its importance. It simply blended into the landscape. A quiet valley, an ordinary hillside, a peaceful village. But below was an entire world. This idea of hidden survival appears in many places throughout human history. People have always adapted to their surroundings. They have learned from nature. They have discovered creative solutions to difficult problems. The underground cities of Cappadocia represent one of the most impressive examples of this human ability. They remind us that intelligence is not only shown through inventions and technology. Sometimes intelligence is shown through adaptation, through patience, through understanding the environment. As we continue our journey, another question begins to emerge. How did these people maintain a sense of community while living in such a confined environment? How did they handle disagreements? How did they organize thousands of lives beneath the ground? Because a city is not made only from rooms and tunnels. A city is made from people, their relationships, their traditions, their shared experiences. The underground world was not empty stone. It was filled with human stories, stories of families, stories of friendship, stories of courage. Stories of ordinary people who faced extraordinary circumstances. And among these stories are the ones that reveal how people found moments of joy, even in a hidden world. Because even beneath the earth, humans still celebrated. They still created. They still dreamed. They still looked toward the future. The next part of our journey will explore the everyday life of these underground communities in greater detail, the food they ate, the work they performed, the traditions they preserved, and the quiet moments that made this hidden city feel like home. As you continue your quiet journey through the underground city, you begin to notice something important. The deeper you go, the less this place feels like a shelter, and the more it feels like a home. A home unlike any other. A home created beneath layers of earth and stone. A home where thousands of people experience the same emotions that people have always experienced throughout history. Happiness, worry, hope, love. The underground city was not only about survival, it was about life itself. Imagine waking up in this hidden world many centuries ago. The first thing you notice is the gentle darkness. There is no bright sunlight entering through a window, no sound of birds outside your home. Instead, there is the quiet movement of people beginning their day. A small flame flickers nearby. Someone prepares the morning meal. A child slowly wakes and hears familiar voices. The underground city begins another morning. Even without seeing the sunrise, people knew when a new day had begun. Life followed routines. People understood the passage of time through their daily activities. Work, rest, meals, conversations, community gatherings. The human mind is incredibly adaptable. People can create a sense of normal life almost anywhere, and these communities proved that. Food was one of the most important parts of underground survival. A population of thousands required careful planning. Every meal depended on preparation that often began months or even years earlier. The people understood that underground life required patience. Harvest time was especially important. When crops were ready above ground, families worked together. Grain was collected, fruits were preserved, seeds were saved for future seasons. Nothing valuable was wasted. The underground storage chambers became the foundation of survival. Large containers held supplies that could last through difficult periods. Imagine entering one of these storage rooms. The air is cool. The temperature is steady. Rows of clay jars sit carefully arranged along the walls. Each container represents planning. Each container represents a family depending on the future. The people who stored these supplies were thinking beyond the present moment. They were preparing for uncertainty. This way of thinking shaped their entire society. They understood that survival was not about strength alone. It was about wisdom. It was about knowing when to save, knowing when to share, knowing when to prepare. Cooking underground required skill as well. Fire was useful, but dangerous. Smoke could quickly become a serious problem in enclosed spaces, so cooking areas were carefully placed near ventilation systems. The people had to balance many things. They needed warmth, they needed food, but they also needed clean air. Every part of daily life required awareness. Even simple activities demanded careful thought. This is what makes the underground cities so fascinating. The people who lived there were constantly solving problems, not with modern technology, but with observation and experience. They learned from the world around them. They understood stone. They understood air. They understood seasons. They understood human needs. Their knowledge was practical and deeply connected to their environment. Another important part of underground life was craftsmanship. People still needed tools. They still needed clothing. They still needed containers, farming equipment, and household items. Life did not stop because people moved underground. Skilled workers continued their crafts. A person who worked with metal would repair tools. A person skilled with pottery would create storage containers. A person experienced in construction would maintain the tunnels. The underground city was supported by many different abilities. Every skill had value. Every person contributed something. In this way, the hidden city was similar to communities everywhere. A society works because people depend on one another. No single person can do everything. The farmer depends on the craftsman. The craftsman depends on the farmer. Families depend on neighbors. Children depend on elders for knowledge. The underground city was a powerful example of cooperation. Perhaps one of the most beautiful parts of this hidden civilization was the way people preserved their traditions. Even in difficult circumstances, humans search for meaning. They tell stories. They teach beliefs. They celebrate important moments. They remember their ancestors. The underground chambers were filled not only with practical activities, but also with emotional connections. A child listening to an elder's story would learn about the past. A family gathering would strengthen relationships. A shared tradition would remind everyone that they belonged to something larger than themselves. The tunnels protected their bodies, but their traditions protected their identity. Imagine an evening deep beneath the earth. The day's work is finished. The lamps glow softly. Families gather together. Someone begins telling a story from many years ago. A story about ancestors. A story about survival. A story about courage. The younger generation listens carefully. They may not realize it yet, but they are receiving something precious. Memory. The ability of a community to continue through time. Above ground, kingdoms may rise and fall. Borders may change. Languages may evolve. But stories keep people connected. And underground, those stories continued. Another fascinating aspect of these communities was the relationship between darkness and light. Modern people often associate darkness with fear, but for the people living here, darkness was familiar. It was not an enemy. It was part of their environment. A small lamp could create comfort. A familiar voice could make a tunnel feel welcoming. A gathering of people could transform a stone chamber into a warm home. Light was not measured by how bright a room was. It was measured by what happened inside it. A room full of loved ones was never truly dark. As the centuries passed, these underground cities continued to serve different generations. Some periods were peaceful, others were dangerous. But the hidden world remained ready, waiting beneath the surface. A reminder that human beings can adapt in remarkable ways. The story of these 20,000 people is not only about where they lived, it is about how they lived. It is about creativity, community, and the incredible ability of humans to create a future even in the most unexpected places. But there are still many secrets waiting deeper below. Because an underground city capable of supporting thousands of people required more than homes and storage rooms. It required protection systems, hidden entrances, emergency plans, and clever designs that allowed entire communities to disappear when danger arrived. we will explore the remarkable defensive strategies that helped this hidden civilization survive for centuries. The deeper you travel into the underground city, the more you begin to understand that this place was built around one powerful idea: survival. Not survival through force, not survival through conquest, but survival through intelligence, preparation, and unity. The people who created this hidden world understood something that every generation before and after them has learned in different ways. A community is strongest when it is prepared. Imagine standing beside one of the massive circular stone doors that protected the underground passages. At first, it seems almost impossible that ordinary people could move such a heavy piece of stone. Yet the design was surprisingly clever. The door was shaped like a large wheel. When danger approached, people inside could carefully roll it across the passage until it completely blocked the entrance. Once closed, the stone barrier created a powerful separation between the underground residents and the outside world. The door was not meant for attacking enemies. It was meant for buying time. Time for families to move deeper inside. Time for supplies to be organized. Time for everyone to reach safety. The people understood that survival was often about patience. Waiting, remaining calm, trusting the systems they had created. This was one of the greatest strengths of the underground city. It did not depend on a single person. It depended on everyone. Every family knew their responsibility. Every passage had a purpose. Every room had a role. Every generation added knowledge that helped the next generation survive. The underground city was like a living memory. A place where experience was carved directly into stone. Imagine a child growing up in this environment. From an early age, they would learn the importance of preparation. They would understand which areas were safe. They would know the locations of storage rooms. They would recognize the sounds of ordinary life compared with moments of danger. The underground world would teach them lessons without words. They would learn that cooperation mattered. They would learn that every person had value. They would learn that survival was something created together. This was not only a physical city, it was a social system, a hidden society beneath the earth. One of the most remarkable things about these underground settlements was their ability to remain functional during long periods of isolation. Living underground for a short time is one challenge. Living there for weeks or months is completely different. The people needed systems that could continue working even when the surface world was unreachable. Food storage was essential. Water access was essential. Air circulation was essential. But perhaps the most important resource was human organization. Without cooperation, even the greatest engineering achievements would fail. Thousands of people living together required trust. They needed to share resources. They needed to respect boundaries. They needed to support vulnerable members of the community: children, elderly people, those who were sick or injured. The underground city was not simply a place where people survived individually. It was a place where people survived together. As you walk through the passages, imagine the quiet conversations that once filled these spaces. Neighbors discussing daily tasks, families planning meals, workers repairing tools, elders sharing memories. The walls absorbed thousands of voices. Most of those voices have disappeared, but the spaces remain. They remind us that history is not only about famous people. It is also about ordinary individuals whose determination shaped the world. The builders of these underground cities rarely appear in history books. We do not know the names of most craftsmen who carved the tunnels. We do not know the names of the families who stored food in the chambers. We do not know the names of the children who grew up beneath the earth. But their achievements remain. Their work survived. Their hidden world still tells their story. Another fascinating part of the underground city was its relationship with secrecy. The greatest protection was often invisibility. A castle announces its presence. A fortress shows its strength. But an underground city hides. Its power came from being unknown. Above ground, life could appear ordinary. A person walking across the landscape might never imagine that thousands of people were living beneath their feet. This hidden design changed the meaning of protection. The people did not need to defeat every threat. They simply needed to avoid being discovered. It was a strategy based on patience rather than power. And in many situations, it worked. The underground city became a silent guardian. It protected communities during uncertain periods. It allowed people to preserve their way of life. It gave families a place where they could wait until danger passed. Imagine the moment when the threat finally disappeared. The stone door slowly opens. Fresh air enters. People carefully return toward the surface. After spending so much time underground, sunlight would feel almost overwhelming. The warmth of the sun, the open sky, the sound of birds, the feeling of wind moving across the fields. Simple things would feel extraordinary. Perhaps children would run outside first. Perhaps adults would stand quietly for a moment, grateful to see the world above again. The underground city was never a replacement for the surface. It was a guardian that allowed people to return to it. This is one of the most important lessons hidden beneath the earth. Humans are not only builders of great monuments, they are also builders of solutions. When faced with challenges, people adapt. They create. They imagine possibilities that do not seem possible at first. The underground cities of Cappadocia represent this ability perfectly. They show that even in times of uncertainty, creativity can create hope. But the mystery of these hidden cities does not end with their defensive designs. Because beyond the stone doors and protective systems, there was another incredible achievement: a complete underground economy. People did not simply hide here. They worked. They produced. They created. They maintained a functioning society beneath the surface. How did thousands of people continue their daily occupations underground? What kinds of work existed in a hidden city? How did they maintain tools, produce goods, and support such a large population? The answers reveal another fascinating chapter of this forgotten world. As you continue deeper into the underground city, a new realization slowly begins to appear. This was not only a place of hiding. It was a place of work, a place where people created, repaired, traded, learned, and lived. The underground city was not frozen in time. It was active. It was alive. Beneath the quiet landscape of Cappadocia, thousands of people built a society that depended on countless daily activities. Imagine waking up inside this hidden world. The small flame of an oil lamp gently illuminates the room. Around you, People begin preparing for another day. Someone checks the stored grain. Someone repairs a damaged tool. Someone prepares food for the family. Someone carries supplies through the narrow corridors. The underground city slowly awakens, not with the noise of a modern city. There are no vehicles, no crowded streets, no tall buildings. Instead, there is a softer rhythm, the sound of human activity, the sound of people working together, the sound of survival. One of the most important occupations in these communities was farming. Even though much of daily life happened underground, people still depended on the land above. The fields surrounding the underground cities provided essential resources. During peaceful periods, families would return to the surface to grow crops and care for animals. The underground world and the surface world were connected. One could not exist without the other. The earth above provided food. The earth below provided protection. Together, they created a complete way of life. Imagine a farmer walking through the valley during the early morning. The sun slowly rises over the hills. The air is cool. The fields are quiet. The farmer knows that beneath this same land lies a hidden refuge created by generations of ancestors. The surface provides life. The underground provides security. This connection between two worlds shaped everything. Another important part of underground life was craftsmanship. People needed tools. They needed containers. They needed clothing and equipment. A hidden city of thousands could not depend entirely on the outside world. Many everyday items had to be created or repaired locally. Skilled workers played an important role. A craftsman who understood materials could repair broken objects. A person experienced with stone could maintain passages. A person skilled in making containers could create storage vessels. Every ability contributed to the survival of the community. The underground city was a reminder that societies are built not only by leaders. They are built by ordinary people with valuable skills. The person repairing a tool was just as important as the person making decisions. The person preserving food was just as important as the person protecting the entrance. Everyone had a place. Everyone mattered. Imagine walking through a chamber where craftsmen once worked. Perhaps small pieces of material remain. Perhaps marks on the walls show where tools were used. The room is empty now, but centuries ago, it would have been filled with activity. Hands creating, minds solving problems, people transforming simple materials into things they needed. The underground city was not a place where humanity stopped developing. It was a place where creativity continued. Another fascinating aspect of these communities was trade. Although the underground cities were designed for protection, the people were not completely separated from the outside world. When conditions were safe, they interacted with neighboring communities. Goods were exchanged. Ideas were shared. News traveled. The underground residents were part of a larger world. They were not forgotten people living completely isolated lives. They were connected to the cultures and societies around them. This is important because it changes how we imagine underground life. It was not a world of endless darkness and loneliness. It was a world that moved between two environments. Above ground, people worked under the open sky. Below ground, they found safety and stability. The ability to move between these two worlds gave them flexibility. They could enjoy the benefits of the surface while maintaining the protection of the underground city. One of the most impressive things about these communities was their understanding of resources. Nothing could be wasted. Water had to be protected. Food had to be preserved. Space had to be used carefully. Materials had to serve multiple purposes. This required a mindset based on responsibility. People understood that every resource had value. A broken object was repaired instead of discarded. A small space was used instead of ignored. A stored supply was protected because the future depended on it. In many ways, their lifestyle reflected a deep connection with sustainability. They used what they had. They respected their environment. They adapted instead of constantly replacing. Modern societies can learn from this ancient approach. The underground city also shows us something about human psychology. People need more than physical survival. They need connection. They need purpose. They need a sense of belonging. Even beneath the earth, people created communities. They formed friendships. They raised families. They shared experiences. They built memories. The underground city was successful because it was not simply a structure. It was a home. A home is not created by walls alone. It is created by the people inside. Imagine an evening underground. The day's work is finished. The tunnels become quieter. Families gather. Food is shared. Stories are exchanged. Children listen as older generations describe the world above. The lamps create small pools of golden light. The stone walls reflect gentle shadows. For a moment, the underground city feels peaceful, safe, almost timeless. Thousands of years later, we can still imagine those moments. Because human experiences remain familiar across history, people in ancient underground cities and people living in modern homes share many of the same desires: safety, family, comfort, hope. The technology changes, the surroundings change, but human emotions remain surprisingly similar. And perhaps that is why these hidden cities continue to fascinate us. They are not only archaeological discoveries, they are reminders of human resilience. They show what people can achieve when they work together. They show that even when the world becomes uncertain, humans find ways to continue. But the underground city still holds more mysteries. Because creating a society below the earth required not only work and organization, it also required a deep understanding of survival itself. The builders had to think about future generations. They had to design spaces that could last. They had to create systems that would function long after the original builders were gone. And perhaps the greatest question remains: how did a hidden city created thousands of years ago remain forgotten for so long? How did an entire underground world wait beneath the surface while the modern world slowly developed above it? The answer leads us toward the fascinating story of rediscovery, the moment when humanity finally began opening the doors to this forgotten civilization. The underground city remained silent for centuries. Above the surface, the world continued changing. New buildings appeared. New roads were created. New generations were born. People lived their entire lives without knowing that an enormous hidden world existed beneath their feet. The fields were planted. Animals moved across the valleys. Villages grew. Seasons came and went. And beneath all of it, the ancient tunnels waited patiently. They waited in darkness. They waited in silence. They waited for someone to discover their forgotten story. Imagine walking across the peaceful landscape of Cappadocia many years ago. The morning air is cool. A gentle breeze moves across the hills. The landscape looks ordinary. Perhaps you see farmers working in the distance. Perhaps you see small homes built into the rocky surroundings. Nothing seems unusual. But beneath the ground, thousands of years of human history remain hidden. A complete underground world. A place where families once lived. A place where children grew up. A place where people protected their hopes and dreams. For centuries, the entrances remained unknown or unnoticed. The underground city became part of the landscape itself. Nature covered its secrets. Time softened its traces. The world above slowly forgot what existed below. But history has a way of revealing what was hidden. And eventually, these underground cities began to return to human memory. The discovery of these places was not a simple moment. It was a gradual process. People began noticing unusual openings, hidden passages, strange spaces beneath familiar areas. What appeared to be ordinary stone formations sometimes revealed something far more remarkable. A doorway, a tunnel, a staircase leading into darkness. Imagine the first person stepping into one of these forgotten passages. The air is different. The temperature changes. The outside sunlight slowly disappears behind them. They move carefully forward. Every step reveals another mystery. A room, a corridor, a chamber carved by human hands. The realization slowly begins. This is not a natural cave. Someone created this. Someone lived here. Someone built an entire world beneath the earth. The discovery must have felt almost impossible. Because the underground cities challenged the way people understood ancient history. They showed that people thousands of years ago were capable of incredible planning and engineering. They were not simply surviving. They were creating. They were designing. They were solving problems that still impress researchers today. One of the most famous underground settlements discovered in Cappadocia is the underground city known as Derinkuyu. When explorers began studying it, they found something extraordinary. Multiple levels extending deep beneath the surface. Rooms connected by complex passages. Areas designed for different purposes. Spaces that suggested a large population once lived there. The scale was astonishing. The deeper researchers explored, the more questions appeared. Who created this? How long did people live here? How did they organize such a massive underground community? The answers were not simple. Because the underground cities were not created by one civilization alone. Different groups used, expanded, and adapted these spaces throughout history. Each generation left behind traces of its existence. The underground city became a layered story. A story written in stone. Every passage represented a different chapter. Every chamber represented a different period of human life. This is what makes archaeological discoveries so fascinating. They are not just about objects. They are about people. When researchers enter an ancient room, they are not only looking at stone. They were imagining the lives that once filled that space. A family sitting together. a worker creating something useful, a child exploring a familiar passage, a community preparing for another season. The underground city allows us to connect with people who lived long before us, people whose names may be forgotten, but whose experiences feel surprisingly familiar. As archaeologists studied these places, they discovered more evidence of careful planning. Ventilation systems showed a deep understanding of survival. Storage areas revealed preparation. Living spaces revealed community organization. Religious areas showed that spiritual life continued underground. Every discovery added another piece to the story. The underground city was not a random collection of tunnels. It was a carefully created environment, a hidden civilization, a place where thousands of people once shared daily life. The rediscovery of these cities also changed how people viewed ancient engineering. Many assume that advanced construction requires modern machines, but these underground settlements prove another truth. Human creativity does not depend only on technology. It depends on observation, patience, knowledge, and determination. The builders understood their environment. They understood the properties of volcanic stone. They understood airflow. They understood human needs. They created solutions using the resources available to them. Their achievements remind us that intelligence has existed in every era. Ancient people were not limited by the tools they lacked. They were empowered by the knowledge they possessed. Imagine standing inside one of these chambers today. The same walls that once surrounded ancient families now surround visitors from around the world. The same passages that carried the footsteps of farmers, craftsmen, and children now carry the footsteps of historians and explorers. The city has changed its purpose, but it has not lost its meaning. It remains a connection between the past and the present. A reminder that countless human stories are still waiting to be discovered. Yet even after modern exploration, many questions remain unanswered. Some passages continue to surprise researchers. Some chambers still hold mysteries. Some details about daily life remain unknown. The underground city gives us many answers. But it also creates new questions. And perhaps that is what makes it so fascinating. A mystery does not always disappear when we discover something. Sometimes discovery only reveals how much more there is to learn. The story of the 20,000 people who lived beneath the earth is far from finished, because the final chapters are not only about the city itself, they are about the people who called it home, the families who found comfort in darkness, the communities that survived uncertainty, and the legacy they left behind for the modern world. As we continue deeper into this story, we will explore what these underground cities teach us about human courage, adaptation, and the timeless desire to protect the things we love. As we continue our quiet journey through the underground city, the stone passages begin to feel less like a forgotten place and more like a memory preserved beneath the earth. For thousands of years, these tunnels remained hidden from the changing world above. But the stories inside them never truly disappeared. Every room carried traces of human existence. Every corridor held the echoes of countless footsteps. Every carved surface represented a decision made by people who wanted something simple and universal. A safe place to live, a place where their families could survive, a place where the future could continue. Imagine sitting inside one of the underground chambers during a peaceful evening. The small flame of an oil lamp moves gently. The shadows on the walls shift slowly. Around you, families gather after a long day. Someone shares food. Someone repairs a tool. Someone tells a story from the past. The outside world feels far away. But inside this chamber, life continues. This is perhaps the greatest secret of the underground cities. They were not built only from stone. They were built from human moments. Moments of kindness. Moments of cooperation. Moments of courage. When we look at ancient structures today, it is easy to focus only on their size. The number of rooms, the depth of the tunnels, the complexity of the design. But behind every measurement is a human story. A person who carried materials, a person who carved the walls, a person who prepared food, a person who cared for children, a person who hoped tomorrow would be better. The underground city was created by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. One of the most fascinating lessons from these hidden settlements is how humans adapt to difficult environments. The people of Cappadocia did not have unlimited resources. They did not have modern machines. They did not have advanced technology. Instead, they studied the world around them. They learned from the land. They understood the qualities of volcanic rock. They recognized how temperature changed underground. They discovered how air moved naturally. They used knowledge gained through experience. Their achievements remind us that innovation is not always about creating something completely new. Sometimes, innovation is about seeing the possibilities already around you. The earth beneath their feet became their protection. The stone around them became their shelter. The darkness became their refuge. They transformed challenges into solutions. Imagine the first generation that began carving these spaces. They probably had no idea how large the underground world would become. Perhaps the first rooms were simple shelters. A place to store supplies, a place to escape danger. But slowly, over many years, those small spaces expanded. More tunnels were created. More chambers were added. More connections were formed. The underground city grew like the roots of an ancient tree. Quietly, patiently, naturally. Each generation continued the work. A child who watched their parents carve stone might later expand the same passage. A family that created one storage room might inspire another family to build another. The city became a shared achievement, not belonging to one person, but belonging to everyone who contributed. This sense of shared responsibility was essential. A city cannot survive without cooperation, and an underground city of thousands required cooperation on an even greater scale. People had to trust their neighbors. They had to share resources. They had to respect the rules that kept everyone safe. The underground world was a reminder that survival is often a collective effort. No individual could create such a place alone. No single person could maintain it. It existed because thousands of people worked together. As you slowly walk through the deeper passages, you might imagine the many generations that passed through here. A young child walking beside a parent. A worker returning after a long day. An elderly person sharing memories. a family preparing for another winter. Their lives were different from ours in many ways, but their feelings were familiar. They wanted security. They wanted belonging. They wanted their children to have a future. Thousands of years may separate us from them, but those emotions remain unchanged. Perhaps this is why these underground cities continue to attract people from around the world. They are not only examples of ancient engineering, they are reminders of human connection. They show that people in every age have faced uncertainty, and they show that people in every age have searched for solutions. The underground city also teaches us something about the relationship between humans and nature. The builders did not fight against the landscape. They worked with it. They recognized the opportunities hidden within the volcanic stone. They adapted their homes to the environment instead of forcing the environment to change completely. This balance between human creativity and natural resources created something remarkable, a place that could protect thousands while existing quietly within the landscape. Today, when visitors enter these underground cities, they often experience a strange feeling, a feeling of connection. The walls are ancient, the tunnels are narrow, the rooms are silent. Yet somehow, the presence of past lives feels close. You can almost imagine the sounds that once filled these spaces, the conversations, the footsteps, the laughter, the prayers, the simple activities of everyday life. History is often presented through dates and names, but places like this remind us that history is also about ordinary experiences. It is about people waking up in the morning, people preparing meals, people caring for families, people facing challenges, people hoping for better days. The 20,000 people who lived underground were not just inhabitants of a hidden city. They were individuals with dreams, fears, and memories. Their world may have existed beneath the ground, but their humanity was exactly the same as ours. And perhaps the most beautiful lesson from their story is this: even in darkness, humans create light. Not only physical light from lamps, but the light of community, the light of hope, the light of determination. The underground city remained hidden for centuries, but its message continues reaching us today. It tells us that creativity can appear in the most unexpected places. It tells us that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. And it reminds us that the greatest structures in history are not always built to be seen. Sometimes, the most incredible achievements are the ones hidden beneath our feet. But there is still one final part of this journey remaining. Because after exploring how these people lived, survived, and built their hidden world, we must finally understand the lasting legacy of the underground cities. Why do they still matter today? What can modern people learn from those who lived beneath the earth? And why does this forgotten civilization continue to capture our imagination? The final answers are waiting deeper within the story. The journey beneath the earth slowly comes to an end. The quiet tunnels that once sheltered thousands of people now stand as a reminder of a remarkable chapter in human history. For centuries, these underground cities remained hidden. The world above changed again and again. Kingdoms disappeared. New civilizations emerged. Technology advanced. Cities grew larger. Yet beneath the ancient landscape, The underground world remained almost untouched, waiting for someone to listen to its story. And now, after traveling through these silent passages, we finally understand what makes this place so extraordinary. It was never only about stone. It was never only about tunnels. It was never only about survival. It was about people. People who faced uncertainty but refused to give up. People who looked at the earth beneath them and saw possibility instead of limitation. People who transformed darkness into a place of safety. Imagine standing one last time inside one of the deepest chambers. The lamp beside you burns softly. The air moves gently through the ancient ventilation shafts. The walls around you have remained strong for thousands of years. You place your hand against the stone and think about all the people who stood in this same place before you. A parent protecting a child, a worker returning home, a family sharing a meal, a community waiting patiently for safer days. Their names may have disappeared, their voices may have faded, but their achievement remains. The underground city is their message to the future, a message that says humans are capable of extraordinary things when they work together. The story of the 20,000 people who lived underground is not a story of people escaping from life. It is a story of people protecting life. They did not build beneath the earth because they had lost hope. They built because hope mattered. They wanted their families to survive. They wanted their traditions to continue. They wanted their children to see another sunrise. Every carved room represented a belief that tomorrow was worth preparing for. Every tunnel represented patience. Every hidden chamber represented determination. When we look at these underground cities today, it is easy to be amazed by the engineering, the ventilation systems, the storage areas, the stone doors, the complex networks of passages. All of these achievements are remarkable, but perhaps the greatest achievement was something much simpler: the ability of thousands of people to live together, to trust one another, to share resources, to cooperate during difficult times. The underground city survived because the people inside understood that their greatest strength was not the stone surrounding them. Their greatest strength was each other. This lesson remains powerful even today. Modern society has changed dramatically. We have advanced technology, faster communication, larger buildings, more comfortable homes. Yet the basic needs of humanity remain the same. People still search for safety. People still need community. People still depend on cooperation. The underground cities remind us that progress is not only measured by inventions, it is also measured by resilience, by creativity, by the ability to adapt. The people who lived beneath Cappadocia understood their environment in a way that modern people often forget. They observed nature. They respected resources. They used what was available. They created solutions that matched their world. Their underground homes were not a rejection of nature. They were a partnership with it. The earth provided protection. Humans provided imagination. Together, they created something unforgettable. As you slowly walk back toward the surface, the passage begins to rise. The darkness gradually becomes lighter. The cool underground air slowly mixes with the warmth from above. After traveling through this hidden world, the sunlight feels different, brighter, more precious. You step outside. The open sky stretches above you. The wind moves across the landscape. The valleys of Cappadocia appear peaceful and unchanged. It is difficult to believe that beneath this quiet ground, an entire civilization once existed. A civilization that laughed, worked, loved, survived. A civilization that proved humans can create homes in the most unexpected places. The underground city teaches us that history is not always found in grand palaces or famous monuments. Sometimes, history is hidden in the places we least expect. Sometimes, the greatest stories are buried beneath our feet. The 20,000 people who lived underground left behind more than tunnels and rooms. They left behind a lesson. A lesson about courage. A lesson about preparation. A lesson about community. A lesson about the incredible ability of human beings to adapt. Their world was dark beneath the earth, but their lives were filled with meaning. And perhaps that is the most beautiful truth hidden inside this ancient city. Light does not always come from the sky. Sometimes humans create their own light, through kindness, through cooperation, through hope. Thousands of years ago, people carved a world beneath the earth. Today, that world reminds us of something timeless. No matter how difficult the circumstances become, humans have always searched for a way forward. They build, they adapt, they protect what they love, and they continue. The underground city remains silent now, but if you listen carefully, beneath the ancient stone, you can still hear the echoes of those who lived there. Not voices of fear, not voices of desperation, but voices of determination. The voices of people who looked into the unknown and chose to create a future. A hidden future. A remarkable future. A future that waited beneath the earth for thousands of years before finally sharing its story with the world. And that is the incredible story of the 20,000 people who lived underground in secret.